Welcome to the December 16th Utilities Committee meeting. We're starting with the Blackjack Creek Homeless Camp Abatements.
Okay, so I'm going to date myself, but how many of you read the book or watched the movie by Joseph Heller called Catch-22? Alan Arkin,
I read the book.
Art Garfunkel.
Yeah, I didn't see the movie, read the book.
So this whole homeless thing has turned into a complete catch-22, and I'm just bringing this to the committee, to have a discussion. The reality of it is that between, I guess, two recent court decisions, this issue has gone from nearly impossible to manage to now like completely. I have no idea how to deal with it.
Oh, Boise versus Idaho?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Just listened to that this morning.
Right. So you have a situation. So I'll go over. So in the packet, I've got this first bundle. We first got the letter back in February from the health district. And know that at the time that I got this letter at the health district, at a different department of the health district, I was having conversations with Keith Groner, who was their director, and we were talking about the needle exchange. Because we were having issues with our staff and then our landscape company finding a needle and what they do with it. And we had this whole issue of what's the procedure, because we were finding a lot of needles like at Etta and around, right? So we had this very in-depth conversation about the county's needle exchange program with Pierce County and King County, and the health district really realized that they were adding to our issues, and it wasn't going to become a public works burden. Unfortunately, nothing has come from that conversation yet. Our SOPs still have, whether it's Progressive or our guys, they've run up onto some needles. We're calling 911, and that's the SOP. The health district is looking at trying to get funding for a position. I saw something in the paper months ago that there was part of their needle exchange where they're actually going to go to each city and parts of the county and come in and pick up needles. I mean, I don't know. So that it's related. Okay, so we were having these conversations about the needle exchange program and the amount of needles and how we're going to deal with it. And of course, here a couple of months ago, you had that King County public works employee that got stabbed, and now he got like a $6 million settlement. So that's a real thing, okay?
But he got set by a person and not a needle. I don't remember what it was.
I don't remember the specifics, but I just know that it's hit the ears of the union, and so as we go through this conversation, you're going to start seeing some of the catch-22. So we're dealing with this needle issue, we're dealing with this homeless issue, we're dealing with this mental health crisis. It's all kind of building, right? So what we have is, if you look at this map, probably the one that's just behind the first letter. So the city, when they did this sewer treatment plant, they passed ULID 1, okay? So what you have is you have all these parcels, unbuildable parcels, because the guy that platted the city back in 1890, he drew a bunch of rectangles, didn't look at buildable area. So you have all these lots, and at some point, somebody bought maybe a whole block, and they built on 3 of the 60 lots or whatever, whatever it is. And so you have actual ownership of these lots. Well, it was never an issue until ULID came through and each lot was assessed. Because these lots were assessed, but the owners didn't want to pay the assessment, they went into foreclosure. So all these little orange triangles are basically, most of these are, they're either private or city through foreclosure ownership and not just unopened right-of-way. So you've got lots that are still owned by people that are unbuildable, and then you've got unopened right-of-way, and then you've got lots that the city has obtained through foreclosure based on the ULID. So you have this mix of properties that are down in this ravine. So we received back in February, the email from the health, or the letter from the health district that said, hey, you've got to clean up your property. Okay. We cleaned up a camp a couple years ago. We got a lot of pushback from the union. It was a tremendous amount of time and effort to gather that stuff up and haul it out. When this came to my office, and the reason it's now coming up almost on a year, because I've been really pushing back on the health district to say, look, this isn't just a simple matter of you telling the city you need to do it. And then it becomes a public works issue. This is a much larger issue. And oh, by the way, if you go into the next sheet behind it, you'll see that the health district sent us this map, and they confirmed. So those little blue dots are encampments, and then the blue shaded areas are properties that we got through foreclosures. So you can see the encampments that are our responsibility. The problem is you have all these other encampments, and they don't even show all of them. If you go further south up towards Roland's property, up from Bravo Terrace office, there's huge encampments down there.
Really?
And so I was pushing back, saying, look, what do you want us to do? And what the health district was really suggesting is, well, we'd clean this up when we'd post signs or we'd fence it and keep people out. I was like, well, if you're not addressing any of these other encampments, and we're dealing with this more as a systemic issue, us just going and cleaning this summer wasn't going to gain us anything. In fact, it was just going to create more problems, because if we fenced or put posts for signs or something, they're just going to use that to now build tarps, and so I was reluctant to just say, oh yeah, sure, we'll go down and send Public Works down. The other thing that happened at the same time was when we were talking about it, I started getting pushback from the shop staff. We're not trained. We don't have equipment. This isn't our job. It's not our job to go down and shovel up human feces in encampments and garbage and needles and the whole thing. So I was getting a pushback potentially from the union saying, look, if you train us, if you get us proper equipment, and you dedicate the amount of time that it's going to take to clean this up away from other public works activities. So you can see that this is it's just mounting, right? And as this is happening, now we're getting more people living down there. So the piece de resistance was two things.
Brian's.
One was the lawsuit that we just read something here in the Kitsap Sun about City of Irvington that actually passed some code that allowed them to have people move, and then the guy said, you can't do that because of Boise versus whatever, right? So that was the one thing. And then the other thing was, I can't remember which, where it came out of, but you'll see this packet in here, all this stuff from Olympia. There was another decision that then talks about, so this is Olympia's dealing with how they used to have to clean up, and it gets very involved with noticing, it gets very involved with personal property, having to identify property, give them a certain amount of time in which to recover their property. So I'm just looking at this selfishly from the Public Works Department. It's like, the department says, okay, you got these properties that are years through foreclosure, they're unbuildable, people are camping on it. We're not going to look at all the other campings in there. We're just going to, because you're an easy target, we're just going to make you clean yours up. And oh, by the way, you have to be careful, how you're going to deal with these individuals, right? Because you can't just roust them out there anymore. They have rights. It's their property. So now, so it's really just, I'm just kind of throwing my hands up going, how in the world, is the Public Works Department going to respond to this? So we have a meeting, is it this week? The health district came back with the county and they said, okay, we're going to, because of my resistance, he said, well, we're going to put a 3-prong plan together, which sounds great on the onset, which is county crews will go down, health department crews will go down with you, and they'll observe and help our crews sift through things. And then when we get everything out, the county will help haul stuff away. But it's still the Public Works Department that's going to have to dedicate, and I'm going to get into more of the time and the effort and do all the real work. And there's still our exposure and our liability of somebody getting pricked with a needle, or just we get a claim from the union saying, I don't have the right equipment, or we get the training and the right equipment, but then they just say, we're not doing this. So what you'll also see in the packet is Tony put together an operations manager. He put together an estimate on what we think it would cost us with our time and effort, equipment, materials, T&M, about $25,000 to clean up the identified camps, and not re-cleaning and recleaning.
And this doesn't include keeping, what's the word? They're just going to be repopulated.
Right. Yeah,
So
this is just recurring. This is just recurring. And this doesn't even deal with, this was just assuming that we're just going to clean stuff and throw it away, which now I don't think we can do.
Oh, because of possession.
Because of the possession. And
Yeah.
So now what do we do?
Yeah.
And now we got to know.
If the county is going to be assisting and they're hauling it away, then they can be the ones tagging it and holding it for that period of time.
Right.
So,
But then there's the aspect of, can we even go down there now with this latest thing and remove them? Because
There's no place to send them to.
well, actually, you're not removing their home. I mean, what it is I believe, isn't the interpretation that if they're there, you cannot make them move if there's no place for
if
them
they
to
have
go.
no place else to go.
However, many of these are abandoned.
Some of them are, some of them aren't. But now we're getting into us making that decision. Just because they're gone for the day,
Well, you know what? We can't
what if we go down and
be paralyzed with the situation and have it turn into something that's so terrible. But we need cooperation from all of the entities along there. It has to be a united effort. We can't just pick at it, right?
Right. Well, yeah, I'm looking at it. So this is about $25,000 for this, just one effort, one time.
One time cleanup.
Clean it up. Then Tony provided these are things, the public works projects that are in queue. These are just stuff that other than just day-to-day routine stuff. This is a list of things kind of above and beyond that we have on our list to do at Public Works. And then we have the estimate that we got from Clean Harbors back in April, which, they were less than,
Right.
they're $23,000. They've got the training, the equipment, and they have a strategy to use long boats to float things down and remove them, which still doesn't address the possession issue. So I just really wanted to bring this to your guys' attention, that it really is just this catch-22 that the Public Works Department getting sucked down into this vortex.
So basically, the gist of it really is that you're asking perhaps the council to determine whether homeless encampment cleanup is really Public Works' deal.
At some point after we have this meeting,
Or does that mean, is that a much larger issue that we have to deal with as a city and as a council?
Right.
And how much are we going to be setting aside for regular cleanup? Because these are huge prices. And we're not going to be, this isn't something
right,
that's
this
just
is
going to happen one time.
unbudgeted. Right, this is unbudgeted. We could clean up. When you really think about it, we could clean up all summer.
But
I
the
think
longer
you're-
something goes, though, the more of a problem it is.
I think you're right to push back though, because this is not solving the whole problem. What really bugs me is there's, let's say, 20 encampments, and they're spotlighting the 10 that are on city-owned property.
Yeah. Right.
There's
Yeah.
still a big problem out there
Right.
that they're not addressing,
Right.
No.
and I think that's just ridiculous.
No, and
Either
that's-
you do the whole thing, or
Right, and at one time, the reason there's a match in here that was from the Conservancy is at one time the Conservancy, both City of Burlington, City of Port Orchard, the Conservancy Peninsula, the Great Peninsula Conservancy wanted to have these properties given to them.
Do they still want them?
No, they do not. They backed out completely because it was one thing that there was going to be this conservancy for nature. Now they know that they're buying like a Superfund site. It's going to be if they put that in their ownership, they're going to be the ones on it. So they backed out of the big, they were looking at a bunch of property in East Farmington, that Rydell Road, the Elahi thing. They were doing a thing with them. They backed out of that and they backed out of this. Because they're like, no thanks, we don't want to get involved in that. And all you got to do is look at Seattle and seeing how they're dealing, or now no longer can deal with the issues. So this is just more of a, staff level conversation where I've been pushing back. Then it came up to a director level conversation when the mayor called me during a meeting and said, hey, I'm over here with somebody at the health district and you're not being responsive. And I'm like, no, I have been responsive. I'm just pushing back. So you're right, Cindy. This needs to be elevated to an elected level, and it has to be a county-wide issue, like whether it's KRCC or I don't know what the forum is. But we have to be, this is something that we have to be strategic about. And now with what just happened, again, when you talk about, Mayor Wheeler, where, he was basically kind of attacked at a council meeting by this gentleman that said, you let your cops kick me off the street and you can't do that. And I don't want it to escalate to that, but we're really on this fringe of we go down and do something, and now that these rulings are out and we don't follow all this protocol. I get one of my guys or makes an issue, and he's coming to a council meeting saying, you made me do this, or we have somebody that's on there saying, city, you've destroyed my home and I have no place to go. And I talked to the police department, and they're saying, well, maybe we could now set up a place for them to go. So we'd actually create a center for them to go as a workaround. But is that really the solution? And again, it's, I just, as far as this is just being a public works, go fix it thing, I just see it's unattainable. It's just a catch-22. I don't know what to do. So.
I am not privy to that meeting, so I don't know when it is. I don't think I'm part of that group.
I just know
And what are the other two cities doing? Hallsville and Bainbridge Island?
I haven't heard anything.
Well, I can check on that for you if you'd like to know.
Well,
Yeah, I just need to see. I have to look at my calendar. I thought that there was going to be a meeting, and I'll forward that on to you once I find that.
Oh, okay. I haven't been involved in this. I certainly can be.
Yeah, well, it's if you want to or not. It wasn't really specifically utility related, but yeah. So
I'm
that's
part of the Public Works family.
okay. You are more than welcome.
It really is something, actually, that has to be handled statewide. I think that every city, every jurisdiction now we need policy. We need to
Right.
find out what we actually can do and figure out how it's going to be paid for
I do
and divided up.
not disagree with you. I just know that
But we can't let it get out of control, so this is the hardest thing.
all you gotta do is drive downtown Seattle or downtown Portland.
I do, and I don't go there anymore hardly at
Right.
all. And the filth has gotten to be, it's so extreme. We can't have that.
And then, my wife ended up this last 2 years working in downtown Seattle, and the horror stories that I'm hearing from things that they're having to deal with is just baristas with cleanup and being attacked and not being able to do anything, and it's their hands are tied, and you got the police department that's going, well, nothing we can do. So this is a crisis, a national crisis.
Is there anything coming up on the legislative agenda?
I wonder if actually it's being handled differently in different states. I wonder.
Well, I know if I go to last time I went to Portland, and that was 2 years ago now. It looked terrible.
Same deal, huh?
Same deal.
Well, the warmer states are having the hardest. I'll tell you, Wisconsin, probably not quite as much, because when you get down below zero, You know, people are not staying there as long.
Well, you also have, and there was that expose that Como did called Seattle, or that crisis in Seattle, and to the homeless, Seattle is known as Seattle. You know, you got mild temperatures, and they have so many programs that people are literally flocking here from Wisconsin and North Dakota, and they're taking advantage of the systems. So
It's a bigger problem than our city.
right, it is.
I can't, to be honest with you, I can't see putting staff at risk doing this job. I think if we were going to have to clean up it all, if for some reason we just needed to go in and do that little area, it would have to be hired out, and it only makes sense. This is not what staff was hired to do.
Right, and that's the direction I'm going to move towards, but at that point, that's
if, and you're right.
there's a lot of...
How are we going to keep that from happening again? You can't
Right.
fence the
One-time
area.
cleanup doesn't sound, I mean, yes, it is cleaned up once, but how do we keep it from
You
being
got thoughts.
a recurring issue? Yeah.
Just listening.
I know,
No, I would push back on the county. I think they're doing
It'll be a long-term issue.
but, yeah, I know. I agree, it
We
is.
don't have housing, we don't have the services, we don't have,
No, we
we
don't.
don't have the financial resources for it.
No.
No, and again, it's just a revolving door scenario. And again, we're not even talking about the other properties like Roland and Roland, or that they're not, health district's not even talking to them yet.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what about those properties that are privately owned down there that are having cabins on it? They're
Yeah.
flying under the radar.
I'm going to be in the point in time count, which is probably January, so that's a different half. That's not city related.
Right.
And there are teams that go out and they try to count the people. And I didn't know there were that many active encampments here on Kendall, because when we looked, we couldn't see any. But a lot of them are outside the city.
They come and go.
Yeah. There are some across from the old Les Schwab.
Yeah, down by Kentucky Fried, and that one's apparently being cleaned up now by somebody, but that's the second time.
Yeah, they were working on it. That one's an attractive one because of
It's so flat.
because of the garbage from the Kentucky Fried Chicken. They go there to eat.
Right. But we already cleaned that up.
Yeah.
So we've cleaned twice. We did Kendall once, and then we did behind Kentucky Fried Chicken over the last 5-10 years.
There's a Walmart between Home
yeah.
Depot area
Yeah.
and behind Staples.
Yeah, at this point, because that's, the Home Depot undeveloped property, they're supposedly dealing with that, plus the tornado issues. So, yeah, it's just, so this was just more of an FYI that I am, really pushing back, and I do think I have a coordination meeting scheduled, and I'll continue to kind of push back.
You have our support.
Okay, so that's that one. Okay, the next thing is, so when I came here 11.5 years ago, the sewer, I think it was in the water comprehensive plan, but I think it was also, it was in the water plan. The joint planning area is what they denoted the Sedgwick-Sydney area. And really what the joint planning area stood for was, we don't know what we're going to do with this area. Unfortunately, this area is growing significantly and really starting to move ahead leaps and bounds. And so this is really just to let you know that there have been a number of recent inquiries or applications submitted to the DCD. And, we know that we had, Albertsons years ago, and that was really the only thing out there. Then we had Rush came in and they built their apartments, and they built that one pump station up at Cedar Heights, and the city did that other sewer improvement there on Roland in May, where we separated flows, and we ran that force main down Pottery, so that because the sewer from this whole area used to go up past Cedar Heights and go down Lippert,
Right.
and it used to flow through the wetland all the way down Johnson Creek, which is where Portraiture Boulevard comes up, but it continues all the way to Lippert. And that was a choke point. Those pipes were maxed out, and so we were able to, through a city project and the Rush development, we were able to take all this flow that's coming in from this area up to that new Cedar Heights pump station, and now it pumps up Pottery, and then it goes rolling in May and goes down Port Orchard Boulevard. So we've, bypassed the bottleneck was that gravity system north of Lippert, east of Pottery. But the issue we're having now is when you start looking at, the Rush Apartments that are coming in, Stetson Heights that's coming in, and now there's a potential for additional apartments. They're on the east and west side of Sydney, substantial. You're talking 1,600 ERUs just in this South Basin. We've got potential for another 540 getting near Berry Lake, another 1,200 ERUs. This is all being kind of pushed. For a while there, it was, storage units and kind of low flow things, and now everybody wants to build apartments. And so we have to deal with the sewer in this area. The Albertsons 6-inch force main has capacity. The problem is that the lift station doesn't have capacity, and you can't just keep adding pumps. It's the storage time as things flow in. Right now, we literally have like a 7-minute if that pump. That generator goes out. We've got like 7 minutes to get the generator there and start pumping, and that's today. And so we know that Albertsons is now maxed out. So we're looking at alternatives, and we had a meeting last week. We're looking at 2,100 ERUs just in this corridor. So we had different proposals, thoughts. We were hoping to build just one consolidated new pump station for this Basin 7, the JPA, where Stetson, Rush, and the Kruger and the Tallman properties would just all go into it, and then we'd have only one more pump station, and then we could literally take the stuff that's going to Albertsons, other than Albertsons. We have a way of picking that off and taking it to this. So I was hopeful that we would get all the parties to agree, but we didn't, because really nobody wants to get involved in a laborious process where now you're depending on other people and everybody has their own time frames. So the way it looks is we may end up with definitely 2 new pump stations. Those are the blue. One north of Ruby Creek, one south of Ruby Creek, because there's concerns about trying to get through or under Ruby Creek, which I don't think is a big deal.
It's not very deep.
I don't think it's that deep. And what you do is you'd run a gravity line all the way from like Berry Lake all the way down. You design it so that you can do a directional bore under Ruby, get down, and have one pump station for everything coming down, and then in that same trench up above you'd have a force main. But I didn't get a lot of support for that. It seems like right now we're probably going to end up with these 2 new pump stations, one north and one south of Ruby, and then Rush was going to, in the southwest quadrant, originally they were going to do a Walgreens or something next to those apartments, but now they're going to do more apartments, so that's more ERUs. They're looking at just doing an individual grinder pump for that building and then just pumping into the force main and bypassing the Albertsons. Stetson wanted to do something like that, but they can't because if they were to pump their 300, how many homes,
Whatever it is, yeah.
into that force main, then the Albertsons pump can't push against it.
Mm-hmm.
So Stetson's really going to have to go and work with the Kruger, this southerly pump station, whether they like it or not. They're going to, seems like Rush, with what they're going to add to it, they can kind of slip through with the number of ERUs left and either go to Albertsons or pump directly into the force main, and I think they're going to do that. Stetson is really the one that's going to have to work with the Kruger property and join in on that pump station.
Yeah, Rush pretty well, David made the commitment that they were going to do the grinder pump thing and leave those 100, there are 100 available connections in the Albertsons lift station right now. And so those 100 will be the first ones for Stetson. When Stetson exhausts those, they've got to have
Right.
another pump station.
There's just 100.
There's only 100.
There's only 100 in there.
How soon are homes being built in Stetson?
Well, they want
They're,
to, they think they need to start building homes this summer, which means they don't even have their offsite. They're also running up against a plat
They're running
expiration
into
and,
some-
right. So they got a lot to do.
and they got water lines to run, and they've got a lot.
Last year was when they were hoping, and of course they had that whole issue with the
I saw the trucks hauling away
storm.
mud.
Right.
Yeah.
So they've got a lot of offsite improvements
year.
that they got to manage.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this is just kind of let you know that the JPA is now Basin 7 and that we're getting a lot of different thoughts. And so again, we had a coordination meeting last week where we had BHC there, we had city staff there, and we had all the property owners there to have and we had the property owners representatives. We didn't have
The
any-
engineers and
Yeah,
the
just their,
technical.
we didn't want.
And who pays for what kind of thing?
Right, well, this meeting was what makes sense from a sewer engineering standpoint.
Sure.
And the reason I didn't want property owners there is I didn't want their influence over the staff of, well, I gotta get this done and I've got this. It wanted to be a technical level only conversation. It was,
And you do
Okay.
really think that there needs to be 2 pump stations, one on either side of the creek?
I would rather just have the one.
Like, it makes sense to have one. It makes much better sense to
Well, for the city, yeah, so that we don't end up having to manage 2
And
pump
do
stations.
do a really good job of that pump station.
But again,
And getting all of the players to, because they're the ones that need to pay for it because they are the developers.
Right.
And getting them to work together is the problem.
right, they're going to get CFC type. They'll get credits on the CFCs, but they're the ones that still have to commit to a timeline and to a process.
Make long range though.
Right. So at this point, I'm getting pushback on the 1, and they're like, no, we're going to build the 2, and that's just the way we're going to do it. So anyway, we'll see how this goes. Again, this was just more of a informational, just so that you know that we, this whole JPA in general,
Yes, yeah.
we know that from a water standpoint, this is the 390, so we know that we got to get a reservoir, when well 13 comes online,
Yep.
we have to build a reservoir up there.
Right.
We know that from a transportation standpoint, unless we get the state that $6 million to fix the interchange, this is a bottleneck transportation-wise, and we have this sewer issue. So we're really getting all this, again, this growth in this area, and we have a service issue that isn't just transportation, it's water and sewer as well. So,
And the other aspect of it also is that, we're waiting for the paperwork now, but we've been notified that we were awarded a grant to study consolidation of the 2 water systems. And so this is one area where we would look at hooking it through the 390 zone up to the 580 in the Glenwood area, as well as looking at Old Clifton, connecting them. It'd really be nice to have redundancy.
Yes, actually.
And those are all non-fluorinated.
Well, right now, McCormick Woods is not fluoridated, and that's something that the city's going to have to struggle with, because you can't have a system that is, some is and some isn't. So once we're one system, they're going to have to either be fluoridated, or we're going to have to look at whether we want to keep fluoridation. Huh?
yeah, we're gonna,
One or the other.
one or the other.
Yeah.
What's the ETA on the future gravity
Kind of
line?
smaller worry.
Do we even know? This thing here.
It depends on, in talking with the owners, for both the Kruger and the Tallman, it seems like those are real. For years, Kruger and Tallman came in originally because they were trying to vest to the storm drainage. So they put in pseudo applications for a hotel and some commercial buildings and storage and stuff, simply because they thought that would reserve them from storm drainage. standpoint on our old grading permit. Well, the state Supreme Court's case nullified all that anyway, because storm drainage no longer vests. It's like bulk. It used to be you would vest critical areas, storm drainage, things like that at time of complete application, so that you had predictability. So you couldn't have the goal line moved, like what happened in Bainbridge Island,
Yes.
where the city of Bainbridge kept moving the goal line for that developer, and he finally sued him. So through GMA, you had predictability. You were vested at time of complete application. This state Supreme Court decision that happened about 4 years ago now, 5 years ago, it basically said stormwater does not vest application. It only vests at time of permit. So they moved it from pre-application entitlement to like bulk regulations. Like if you go to build a house, until you're getting ready to build that house, your front yard, side yard setbacks, they can change until you get ready to build your house. That's always been that way. You have things that vest and things that never have. Bulk regulations are one of them. Well, storm drainage went into that pot, and so that decision happened, and you have these properties that even graded and built a pond and stuff. And the same issue with the school district on the thing off of Figley. They're no longer vested. So they really spent time and effort on engineering, thinking that they were going to vest something, and that vesting never occurred. So they weren't real developers going to build real buildings. These now appear to be real developers building real buildings. And now we've got to deal with the sewage. So this might be a 2020 or 2021 issue, getting some of this offsite. Now the good news is at least, developers will be putting in this infrastructure.
But it's crucial to be planning it now, because there's going to be a lot more population growth coming in that area.
Yes,
Period.
right, and that's what we're trying to do, is not do like what the city did with Lowe's, which was they have this whole area identified as part of the Latecomers agreement, but nobody can get to it because everything was west of the non-contributing benefited area. They were all west of Blackjack Creek. I was like, well, why would you do that? You can't get across Blackjack Creek. So the Lowe's pump station has a lot of capacity and no ability for people to help on the latecomers. So,
Which is only good for another year or so anyway. When I looked at it.
Was it?
I just looked at it with Kathy the other day, because every time something goes in over there, or she gets a request for a new, she has to ask me about it, whether
So
there's
those
something.
went in 2007, I think it's right before I got here. Like 2007. And they're good for, well, they used to only be good for 10 years, and then it was 20.
Well, this one, I'm pretty sure it was only another year or two.
Anyway, okay. So next, what you have in your packet is basically everything that we've been talking about for months. You've taken action, but I never had documents to actually put for the record, and so really this is just that will now be in the minutes as far as documents for the record, is the agreement between McCormick Communities and the city, which was the update of the 2007, which the council approved as part of the lifting of the moratorium. The McCormick Bremerton agreement for what they're going to be doing in Bremerton's 580, the Bremerton Port Orchard 580 ILA, and that's the exchange for water, for infrastructure, the reservoir of the main, all that, and all the time frame. And then, of course, the agreement with the fire district that they're going to allow us to be nested until this new tank gets built, which is designed and stacked and all that.
Right.
So this is really just putting documents in the notes if somebody wants to have those in the future. As far as our utility update, Foster.
Back up just for a second. And this may be bailiwick, but where are they on the permit issuance side? I mean, I knew they had gotten permits and looked at them.
I'm not sure. I know that it was what was reported that night. Nick thought maybe there had been 50.
Right.
That wasn't the case. It was only like 12 or 23.
23.
Yeah. So, so only 23 as of that night. I'm not sure where they're at now. I haven't heard.
I haven't seen any much new come through.
Right. So.
That was good English. Any much new?
It's okay.
Yeah. So it wasn't the big
push that everyone.
bang down the door
Yeah.
that we thought, but there were 23 in the queue, so that helps relieve that pressure that was
Right, on us.
on us, and then even on the developer.
Right.
So,
We did, by the way, I did ask Elizabeth to add pump stations 1 and 2 to that big spreadsheet she keeps so that we'll be keeping track on an ongoing basis of which houses have used
okay,
capacity in pump station 1 and pump station 2.
okay. Okay, so Foster and water rights, contractually we got everybody rolling. What's happened
Yes.
lately?
The last thing that happened was there was a meeting on November 20th of the Foster Task Force, which they were presenting their actual report to the legislature. And when I read it, I realized there were some inaccuracies in what I had reported at the previous meeting, so I went to correct it, which I got on the record, so it was officially corrected. They had it that our well 13 was only down to 200 feet instead of 2,000. And big mistake, yeah. And they also had that we were just contracting with consultants rather than the contracts were renewal contracts. So we got those corrected, and we are, as far as the consultants go, we've gone down the path. We've started looking at current water rights that we may be able to purchase or bargain for in some way from surrounding areas. One of the things that's happening outside the Foster but has a bearing on Foster is that at WaterPack this last week, Kitsap PUD has been conducting a year-long test, and they're 6 months into it now, of how the hydraulic model that's been accepted for groundwater reacts in actuality. They've proved it's wrong. And ecology is aware of it. They've so far been studying everything in the central Kitsap. So I asked, are you going to do anything at north or at south? And Bob Hunter from PUD was there and said, well, no, we're not going to do an exhaustive study like this in south. I said, wait a minute, you get tax money from our constituents. He said, well, you're welcome to do the study now that we've laid out how to do it. I said, we don't have the expertise. We don't have hydrogeologists and on staff and whatnot. He said, oh no, you can use our people. I said, okay, great, and we'll go down that road. So that's something that we'll probably be looking at. Well 12, as it's drilled, will give us some more information because it's predicted that it might not be as productive as we want it to be. But then again, well 13 went well past where they predicted bedrock. So all of these things help to prove the model wrong. I did have a meeting with Department of Ecology and Robinson Noble about a month ago about this very thing, and Department of Ecology, Matt Rakow is his name, is very aware that Kitsap County is different than most of the other WIRAs because we don't have a river that streams feed into. And so we have streams that feed into Puget Sound. So the augmentation that so far has been shown through the accepted groundwater model is ridiculous amounts of water that we have to augment because of all of the various streams. So Matt is saying, yes, ecology needs to look at Kitsap County differently. So that was very encouraging also. So.
Okay.
I'll be blunt about it. I still don't understand the Foster Pilot Project well enough to be conversant on it. That's why I was just looking up.
Well, the Foster Pilot Project, what it really is setting up, because ecology, the state legislature realized that ecology, because they keep getting sued every time they issue a water right, they just shut down water rights.
Right.
And the legislature said, no, you can't do that. We have to come up with some way of doing it.
Right.
So that's what the pilot project is about.
Right. It's just addressing how they used to do it, which was in time, in kind.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they used to mitigate to that not being a very good model, because even the tribes were like, no, this isn't going to benefit anybody to just be dumping water into this. So that moved into that net ecological benefit conversation. And so the pilot study is simply moving down the road of seeing what should and can be done in the future for mitigation.
Right.
And everybody else that's not in Foster is just currently on the sidelines waiting.
Watching.
And so,
Yeah, the way I understand it is basically the in-kind, in-time, in-place was challenged when they couldn't do in-kind, in-time, in-place, and they did net ecological benefit, which was not really called that at the time. It was called instead of augmentation, they were doing restoration. And so what they realized is ecology said we need some way to justify that when you can't do in-kind, in-time, in-place, and that's what Foster's about, is to show, okay, we've exhausted tier 1, which is actually, not making a impact at all. Exhausted tier 2, which is buying water rights that are currently there or not being used, or shutting something down. And then tier 3 is getting to the in-kind, in-time, in-place. If that's not possible, then we'll go to the stream watershed restoration projects. So it's basically setting up a protocol, and the more complicated the 5 of us Fosters make things, the more complicated it's going to be for other systems in the future to get water rights. So.
okay, well, 13, I heard we were down about 850 feet.
804 as of last Monday, 843 feet of the 28-inch casing, going a little slower than anticipated. As of last Monday, we were only 41 feet down for the month of December, so
Whoa.
it's a little slower. I think they've hit some pretty good clay. So.
Clay.
Well, 13, mains and PRVs, that's BHC's effort, I'm not sure.
Yeah, they're still struggling with the model. I was so disappointed to see an email from Tony back to Chuck Linder, who is their hydraulic modeler, still asking questions about, well, what about this line and what about that line? And I told Tony this morning, I said, I thought they were all done with the model and we're moving on with things. So when you talk to him, I need to know that and know what's going on there. And so Tony said when he got him on the phone, he would transfer him to me when he was done talking to him. So.
Okay, well, Maple Avenue water mains, and well, that's kind of still falling in there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 11, construction, that's really a future conference, that's a placeholder. We know that we want to get well 11 going, but it's not happening.
2020.
Yeah, it's not happening right now.
Plan on doing the engineering on it in 2020 was my understanding.
Yes. McCormick Pump Station 2, we issued the contract to Stellar J. I've heard nothing back. We did send the letter to McLaren Sons on that, and that letter was received by them. I have not heard anything back. But it was also a 3-page letter that completely outlined why we went with Stellar J. So we're hoping that resolves the issue. And then, of course, we're going to have our new attorney on staff here. And then one of the first things that we're going to do in Public Works Department is going to be working with that attorney on reviewing either our current contracts or adopting their library of contracts or an amalgam. Or there's even a potential that Noah talked about where there's a...
Is this the new staff attorney or what?
Yes.
Oh.
Coming up tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow's...
Contract.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where are they going to sit? Do we have an office with them? Are they going to be in...
No. It's
It's not a staff attorney. It's not a city attorney.
It's a replacement for Lighthouse.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's still going to be a contract.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I thought, are we getting a city attorney?
No.
Okay.
No. No, this is just...
Let's get close.
Yeah.
So we're going to make sure that we have... Because each time we've had a new attorney, we've had them go through all our contracts. And I think I've told the story before, when I came here 2008, we had one contract in the Public Works Department, or in the city, and it was a professional services contract that you would use to hire a consultant to design something. they were using that singular contract for construction, for everything. I think we have 11 or 12 different contracts, whether it's
I don't even know.
personal services, ordinary work, we have the whole menu of contracts now. Small works versus advertised work, yeah. So we'll have this new attorney go through and like I said, then there's a company out there that just specializes on contracts that Noah said that instead of having our new attorney, when they're on staff, look at their templates, we may just have this company come in and just look at what we got and update. So we have an option on that. Okay, water system plan. We really need to get this thing done in Q1 2020. We're pushing the consultant.
Yeah, pushing as hard as we can.
We're getting health department's getting
I'm really disappointed to hear that the hydraulic model is still
Right.
not, because I was told that it was.
Yeah. Behind schedule. Marina Pump Station, we had a good conversation with Ecology a couple of weeks ago, making sure that we're all on board on deliverables and commitments, and we know that we have to have an extension for RH2. We got a little bit behind. A little bit behind. We got trying to work with the downtown redevelopment.
Right.
Just set us back, and we finally hit this point where we're like, we can't wait anymore. But it's still had an issue with Ecology on their expectation originally for that loan of when we would be done with the design. So we're going to have to request an extension for that.
Which is should go out today.
Okay, but we are. At
So
least we've confirmed what it looks like, and the 30% design will be done with that here in March 2020, and then we'll move immediately into then the final design, and with the final design will come the final cost, and then we'll reevaluate, what that pump station's. Is it a $7 million station or a $4 million station? So I think it's going to be the prior.
Curiosity question. What is our interface with the port on that? Is there none, or basically we're just keeping them apprised of what we're doing down there?
Really very little with the port.
Okay.
I mean, they know that we're going to have a new restroom as part of that design, just replacing the crappy one that's there. So, and then we're going to, I'm not sure, I don't know if the mayor's had conversations, because obviously with the redevelopment there's going to be, and with the pump station there's going to be some parking shifting, because we've got the bunker. It's basically going to be in that area where the transferred parking. So, yeah, good question.
I just didn't know regarding property or anything that we transfers with them. Just curiosity.
Yeah, I think at this point they have a new commission for the most part, so we do need to meet in with them.
Oh, cool.
Primarily
We're going
parking.
to have tour of the wells?
Well, yeah, because we were going to try to do a tour before, and that never happened. And now that Chris Hammer will be on board here, might be just a good opportunity that we'll go take a look at 9, the completed version.
That'd be awesome.
We'll go to 13. They'll still be drawing, and then we can go to 1, which is basically online. They've got one issue with. I think we're very close on the punch list to accepting that. And I think we're going to handle it as a warranty item. They've got a water intrusion issue, which I believe is just specific to the stairwell. So they did water stops on the dry well, and that was all good. That somebody had a brain fart on the stairwell, and they basically just didn't think about the stairwell, and that's where the water's coming from. So they're looking at how to keep the water from getting in. And it's a significant amount of water that's getting into this dry
It's
pit.
built in a hillside.
Anyway, and it's not the right time of the year if they end up doing something externally, like doing a curtain drain or something around it. So I think we could handle that as a warranty item.
So are you pumping it now?
There's some pumps in the dry well that,
It's still on bypass right now, but they're right down to the wire. I imagine within the next couple of weeks they'll have it. Yeah.
yeah, it's just an issue with, because we're going down, it's like Marina where you got a dry well and a wet well. Most of ours are submersibles.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't even notice water intrusion. You just have I infiltration and intrusion into the wet well. But because this is designed with an actual wet well and then a dry well where we go down to maintain the pumps and things in that environment, and you got 6 inches of water in the bottom of there, that's not good. So, and it's coming through the stairwell, we think. So their engineers are looking at, they may just tear the stairs off and redo them. Or they may just end up doing some sort of curtain drain or something.
You said it's under warranty?
We haven't accepted it yet.
I see.
But so that we can accept it and get things going, if everything else is good, we can do these repairs under like a warranty item. And really that's it. We do know that in the next, maybe not the next meeting, but in February, we're hoping to the cross connection control program and then the fats, oils, and greases program. We did have a good meeting with the DCD. They were starting to understand really that this isn't a public works water purveyor thing. It's both. It has to do with the DCD and the building permitting group. So Jackie's focusing on that, and we finally got Alan and Nick on board on what that looks like on their side. So, I think in early 2020, we'll probably have some code.
Yeah, I got it here. Just don't have it quite done yet.
Yeah.
I do see that January 20th is Martin Luther King Day, so would it be before or after that we would have our meeting? We need to look at
After.
the 27th.
Or do you move it to Tuesday?
Well, Tuesdays.
Tuesdays doesn't work.
That's
There's
it.
going to be Kitsap Transit.
And plus,
Work
Fred's
day.
got his, we probably should keep it on a Monday.
Possibly, yeah.
Plus, we're gonna. Well, then there's the other issue.
I could try to.
Does that throw you
Tuesday.
off
I could try to
by,
work from home Tuesday.
Let's do the 27th, because the other thing that's going to be happening
Yeah,
is we're going to have new committee assignments.
yeah,
So
okay,
let's give time for that to cycle
For
through.
the 17th, we have our retreat.
right,
Yeah.
That would be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get a-
Maybe we just push it back a
settle
week so that things will settle down. We'll actually know who the utility committee is. And
right.
okay.
I have one more thing that I should have said to you, and I apologize for that.
Okay.
We've been going down the path, say basically since I started in July, trying to get all of our large meters tested to see what their accuracy level is, and that's finally happening on the 2nd and 3rd of January. And at the same time, we've had trouble with the source meters. It's Sparling is the brand, and they seem to go out every couple, 3 years. So Tony researched and has found what's called a mag meter. It has no moving parts, and basically we're going to start switching them all out so that we don't have this issue with them. But I'm really excited to get the large meters tested to see what our accuracy level is. So.
Yeah, we had done some of that 5 or 6 years ago on the smaller meters, and we were like doing change out programs, and we were having issues with reading and conversions. We still had some meters that were not even reading in cubic feet, and so we had cleaned a lot of that up. On the smaller meter size, then we were dealing with the lead issue on getting meters that the bronze bodies that met the lead, copper and lead rule. So this is the 3 inch and up, 2 inch and up,
3 inch and up.
3 inch and up.
And there were only about a dozen of them, but included in that group is the meters for the interties with Bremerton.
Oh,
And that's what started it, is when I started reading the contracts, I realized we were supposed to have these tested. I don't remember if it's annually or every 2 years, and it had never been done. So that's why then I started thinking about, well, what about the other large meters? So we're almost there.
Okay. 59, so it's basically 1 hour. Okay, thank you, and I'll figure out how to turn this off.